Hello again, everybody, and God be with you. And may I wish you all a healthy and happy new year. Well, we've just come to the end of 2020, and it's been quite a challenge, hasn't it? We've been challenged to be patient. We've been challenged to keep our faith and our trust in God that things will come right in the end so we can have hope. We were challenged to think not only of our own health, but also the health of our friends and our neighbours and the people we met. To make sure that we not only didn't catch the virus, but if we did, we didn't pass it on. And earlier in the year too, there was the Black Lives Matter movement, where we were challenged about prejudice, where it was important not just to be not racist, but to be anti-racism, to demonstrate to people that we stand with those people who are against any form of prejudice. So we move into the new year and we start a new story. And today's story is one called The Tempter's Tale, Part 1. There's a hint there that there might be a Part 2 at some time. And Bob Hartman introduces the story like this. It's strange, really. The moment we make a wrong choice, the second we buy into badness, it all seems so clear. It's just this once, we say to ourselves. No one will get hurt. It doesn't really matter. And on the excuses go. But later, when we look back at what we've done, when we have to deal with the shame and the guilt or the consequences, the choice doesn't seem so clear. And so often we wonder how we could ever have made such a foolish decision in the first place. That's certainly how it goes in the story I'm about to read, the story of where badness begins. But you may not feel an overwhelming sense of the presence of evil. No. What you will feel instead, I think, is a lingering sense of sadness and regret. And that is as it should be, because, in a way, this story is about where badness leaves us in the end. He hacked at the ground with his rough stone axe. He hacked at the weeds and at the bushes. He hacked till the sweat poured off his forehead and the calluses rose on his palms. He hacked until he could hear his heart pounding in his ears. But still the slithering things slipped and squirmed away. So he sank down onto a stump and waited for his breath to return and his heart to stop racing. He wiped the sweat from his brow and stared at his hands. And that's when it all came back. The crushing memory of before, the pain of the paradise he'd lost. It was like a bad bruise. It hurt to touch it, but touching it reminded him that it was there. Sometimes a smell would trigger it. Sometimes it would wake him in the night. Today, it was simply the sight of his hands. Knuckles gnarled and cracked, palms rough and swollen, veins running down the backs like tree limbs. Were these the hands, he wondered, that once tended a garden? The hands that stroked the lion's mane and traced the zebra's stripes and danced across the rhino's wrinkled hide as he gave each one its name? Were these really the hands of Adam? Sometimes it seemed impossible. Sometimes it seemed too good to have been true. And sometimes he wondered how it had happened. How had he let it all slip between those rough and dirty fingers? As if to answer the question, a voice called from across the rocky field. Yes, he had blamed her once, blamed her more than once, but he knew now that the fault was his as well as hers. Eve called again and then walked slowly towards him. It was almost impossible to see her as she had once been. The years and the children and the endless toil it took just to survive had erased forever the woman who had danced happily in the garden. He shut his eyes. He shut them tight. He shoved his fists into the sockets, and for a second, just a second, there she was again, flesh of his flesh, bone of his bone. At the dawn of their life together, he remembered touching her hair and her lips and tracing the shape of her face with his fingertips. And he remembered the prayer he had prayed. "Thank you, Creator," he had said, "for this face and for this morning and for all the mornings to come." "Adam," the voice called again. "Adam, why are you sitting there? Get back to work. We have a family to feed." Adam winced. There was still a trace of that other Eve in her voice. The same voice that had called out so many years ago, called out across the garden, "Adam, come quickly. There's someone I want you to meet." That voice was so sweet, the face so innocent and gentle. She'd skipped towards him, excited like a foal or a fawn. She took his hand. Oh, he could feel those fingers still. And she led him, laughing, to the knowledge tree. There was no reason to be alarmed, no cause for concern. Well, those words had no meaning then. All was trust and goodness and love. How could he have known? How could either of them have guessed that their new acquaintance would teach them the meaning of those words, and many more awful still? The serpent was a handsome creature, confident, persuasive, poised. There was venom in his words, but at the time his arguments seemed reasonable. "So, the Creator forbids you to eat from the knowledge tree?" the serpent had asked. "He says that if you do, you will die." Well, what does he have to hide? That's what I want to know. And if he truly loves you, why would he want to keep anything from you? I suspect that he's afraid. Afraid that if you eat from the tree, then you will know as much as he does. So why don't you taste the fruit and find out for yourselves? Even now, even after all the pain and the toil and the years away from the garden, there was a part of Adam that still wasn't sure. Perhaps the serpent was right. Perhaps the Creator was just jealous of what he knew and did not want to share it. Was it so wrong to want to know evil as well as good? Adam looked up. His wife was staring at him, and the answer was there, in the lines on her face and in the sadness that never left her eyes. No amount of knowledge could make up for what those eyes had seen. Forced exile from the garden, and the angel with the fiery sword who was there to make sure they could never return, the desolate land they were condemned to till, the murder of one son by another. Adam looked away and shook his head. His children had often asked him, what did the fruit taste like? Sweet like an apple? Sour like a lemon? How could he have told them the truth? Told them without seeming a fool, that it smelled of decay, that every bite was rotten, that it tasted like death and regret. Adam pounded his fists against his temples, as he had pounded them 1,000 times before. What if? What if? What if? What if they had ignored the serpent? What if they had obeyed the Creator? What if they had never tasted the fruit? Would he still be wrestling with the lion and running with the zebra? Would he still wake up each morning in the soft, wet grass and trace his finger across Eve's forever beautiful face? The thought was simply too much to bear, and so he picked up his axe again and began to hack at the earth. Eve grunted her approval and turned to walk away. But once she was out of sight, he listened again for the hissing one. The Creator had made a promise, Adam remembered. The handsome one, the confident, persuasive creature, would lose his limbs and crawl upon the ground. And one day, surely he was remembering this right, one day Eve would bear a child who would crush that serpent's head. But who was this child? And where was this child? All Adam could do was hope. Hope that the Creator's promise would come true. Hope that someone someday would destroy the serpent. Hope and keep on hacking. Hacking at the ground, hacking at the bushes, hacking at the weeds. Because hacking was easier than yearning for what might have been. Because it was better than longing for the life he had lost when he left his beautiful garden. So, the story of Adam and Eve. Next week, there's the Tempter's Tale, part 2. But we'll come to that then. In the meantime, once again, Happy New Year and God be with you.